Every day, millions of people scroll through endless streams of digital noise, searching for clarity, direction, and truth in a chaotic world. But the most profound blueprints for navigating human life, culture, and leadership weren't written by modern influencers or shifting societal trends. They were recorded thousands of years ago in the pages of the Holy Bible. Welcome to Scroll to Soul. We don't just read the text. We decode the real-world execution strategy for the modern era. If you are ready to stop being a passive observer and start building a life rooted in deep wisdom and intentional action, you are in the right place. You are now among the practitioners. Let's unlock today's blueprint. When we think about building a real estate portfolio, we are often flooded with advice on acquisition, how to identify undervalued assets, negotiate contracts, and scale cash flow. Yet, there is a silent, highly complex side of asset management that advisors rarely address: the strategy of asset recovery. What happens when a massive macroeconomic crisis forces you to completely abandon your primary operations? How do you protect your title deed when you are physically absent from your territory? Most importantly, when you return to reclaim your holdings, how do you recover not just the physical property, but the backdated revenue that accumulated while you were gone? The answers to these high-stakes questions are laid out with clinical precision in 2 Kings chapter 8. Here, we analyze the strategic decisions of the Shunammite woman. This wealthy executive had built a secure estate in her home region, yet she was forced to walk away due to an impending national disaster. Her eventual return and her presentation at the royal court provide the ultimate masterclass in legal advocacy, asset reclamation, and historical yield recovery. The narrative opens with a direct warning from the prophet Elisha. He approaches the Shunammite woman and tells her to take her household and find another place to live, because the Creator has decreed a severe famine on the land that will last for 7 years. This warning represents a major macroeconomic alert. A 7-year famine is not a brief seasonal slowdown. It is a total, systemic collapse of the local agricultural economy. In an agrarian society, a prolonged drought destroys the productivity of the soil, collapses local trade networks, and makes physical real estate temporarily worthless in terms of active cash flow. Faced with this data, the Shunammite woman had to make a critical decision. She could stay and defend her dry lands, consuming her remaining capital reserves just to survive, or she could proactively abandon her physical property to preserve her family's active capital and physical well-being. She chose proactive migration. The text records that she arose and did according to the word of the man of God, taking her household and relocating to the land of the Philistines for 7 years. This first step teaches the modern practitioner a vital lesson in capital preservation. There are times when market conditions, regulatory environments, or regional conflicts become so toxic that the most strategic move is to temporarily exit the territory. If you stubbornly hold on to an underperforming or heavily taxed asset simply because of emotional attachment, you run the risk of draining your liquid reserves. True practitioners do not fall in love with physical buildings or specific geographic locations. They prioritize the survival of their core capital and the safety of their operational team. Sometimes, the most sophisticated wealth preservation strategy requires you to liquidate, mothball, or walk away from your primary operations to fight another day in a more favorable environment. However, leaving physical property empty for 7 years introduces massive operational risks. In both ancient and modern property law, there is a concept known as adverse possession. When an asset is left abandoned and unsupervised, local opportunists, squatter syndicates, or even the state itself will step in to claim ownership. When the 7 years ended, the Shunammite woman returned from the land of the Philistines and immediately faced this exact crisis. Her house and agricultural fields had been seized during her absence. She was now a displaced owner holding a title deed with zero physical possession of her wealth. Instead of conceding defeat or attempting to physically evict the illegal occupiers through a dangerous local conflict, the Shunammite woman executed a highly disciplined legal appeal. She went directly to the highest judicial authority in the land, the king of Israel, to plead for her house and her land. She did not rely on emotional displays or unstructured protests. She prepared a formal presentation, utilizing the power of institutional advocacy and her historical track record of community contribution. As she entered the royal palace, a remarkable moment of strategic alignment occurred. The king was actively conversing with Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, demanding to hear about all the great things the prophet had done. At the exact moment Gehazi was describing how Elisha had restored a dead boy to life, the Shunammite woman walked into the courtroom to present her appeal. Gehazi immediately identified her, telling the king that this was the very woman and this was her son whom Elisha restored to life. This timing was not mere coincidence. It was the natural compounding of historical relational capital. Years before this crisis, the Shunammite woman had built an unshakable reputation for hospitality, generosity, and absolute integrity. She had built a dedicated guest room for the prophet and supported his mission without asking for anything in return. That historical deposit of goodwill now acted as an incredibly powerful advocate in her moment of greatest need. In your career and business ventures, you must understand the financial value of relational equity. The integrity you demonstrate today, the people you support without expecting immediate payment, and the reputation for excellence you build in your community are not just moral achievements, they are high-value intangible assets. When a future crisis hits your organization and you are forced to make a high-stakes appeal before regulators, investors, or institutional leaders, it is your historical track record and your advocates that will speak for you in the rooms where you have no direct access. Your reputation will always arrive in the room before you do. When the king questioned the woman about her situation, she clearly explained her case, presenting the undisputed history of her land ownership and her forced migration. Because her story was validated by an influential, trusted advocate, the king's response was immediate and comprehensive. He did not just grant her simple permission to reoccupy her old house. He went a step further and appointed a specific court official to oversee her case, delivering a direct operational mandate: restore all that was hers, along with all the proceeds of the field from the day she left the land until now. This mandate is the crowning achievement of the Shunammite real estate recovery strategy. Notice that the king's order had two distinct components: restoration of the physical asset and the retrospective recovery of all historical yield. The Shunammite woman did not just get her house back. She received the full cash value of 7 years' worth of agricultural harvest that had been produced on her land while she was gone. The court official was legally obligated to audit the occupiers, calculate the gross output of the fields over the previous 84 months, and transfer that entire wealth reserve directly into her account. This represents the ultimate standard of asset restoration. In the modern professional arena, when you are recovering from a setback, a broken contract, or a legal dispute, you must not settle for simple restitution. You must design your recovery strategies to capture the compounding yield that was lost during the period of disruption. This means securing retrofitted interest, claiming lost opportunity costs, and negotiating for back pay or residual royalties that should have accumulated under your title. True recovery is not just about getting back to zero. It is about reclaiming the entire trajectory of your wealth. Let us summarize the core pillars of the Shunammite woman's portfolio recovery strategy for your professional playbook. First, practice proactive capital preservation, having the wisdom to exit a toxic market rather than burning through liquid reserves. Second, understand the legal risks of asset absence, preparing your title defenses before you walk away. Third, consistently deposit high-value relational equity into your network, knowing that your historical reputation will act as your advocate during a crisis. Finally, when reclaiming assets, systematically demand the restoration of both physical capital and the retrospective yield that accumulated in your absence. Knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment. A life of true impact is built entirely through execution. And that brings us to today's practitioner challenge. Look at your own path, your decisions, and your interactions this week. Identify the single biggest area where passive habits are holding you back, and actively apply the exact scriptural framework we unpacked today. Drop a comment below with the word applied once you've put it into action. Let the community know you are executing, not just listening. We are the practitioners. If this blueprint brought high-value perspective to your life, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this with someone building a lasting legacy. In our next video, we are diving into another foundational principle. Until then, keep executing.